They say revenge is best when it comes quietly, and for Caitlin Clark, that revenge was turning down $1 million check. Her simple no was louder than any packed arena, leaving those behind it embarrassed. This isn't just about basketball anymore, it's about the fall of a man who let his ego get bigger than his legacy. 4 years, Geno Auriemma, once seen as the untouchable king of women's college basketball, has downplayed Clark. He gave half-hearted compliments, brushed off her fans, and acted like her success was nothing new. He tried to sound like a wise ruler judging a rising star, but instead, it exposed his pride.
She's fearless. She just plays. She just is like a little kid in a driveway playing with her friends. So, yeah, she's unique in that way. But in terms of what she's doing,
people may forget things quickly, but Caitlin Clark never did. And now Geno Auriemma is realizing that when you try to belittle a superstar, you end up burned. Every insult, every dismissive comment, and every backhanded remark has led to this moment, the moment Clark didn't just turn down a league, but rejected his entire legacy. It cost him millions and embarrassed him on a global stage. This is payback at its finest. The story goes back to Clark's high school days. Like many young players, her dream was to play for UConn. She even admitted, "I loved UConn. I thought they were the coolest place on earth." But that dream never happened. According to Clark, UConn never showed much real interest. They only called her AAU coach a few times and never reached out directly to her or her family. Geno later claimed he had already chosen Paige Bueckers early and didn't want two-point guards. Then, in an arrogant twist, he even suggested that if Clark truly wanted UConn, she should have called him. Think about that, a legendary coach overlooking a once-in-a-generation talent, then blaming a teenager for his own mistake. That was the first slight, the first dismissal, and it turned into one of the costliest errors in women's basketball history. While Clark went to Iowa, built her own empire, sold out arenas, and broke records, Geno watched from the sidelines. Instead of admitting he missed out, he doubled down, praising her with one hand while cutting her down with the other. It was a calculated move to keep control of the story, but over time, people began to see through it.
Geno talked about Caitlin Clark again and sort of gave some backhanded compliments. Like, he talked about how she connects to the audience, which was good. He talked about how she's tough, like Paige Bueckers. He threw Paige in there, out of his way to, first he's like saying she connects to people, and he could have left it at that, I guess. But he almost goes on to put the, reverse some of that discourse, try to put it in others' laps.
Geno Auriemma could never just praise Caitlin Clark without adding Paige Bueckers' name into the mix. It was his way of reminding everyone that he was still the kingmaker, still holding on to a star of his own. But it wasn't about Paige, it was about deflecting attention away from the fact that Clark was surpassing the very game he claimed to define. He underestimated her, and when he realized it, he tried to box her in. But Caitlin Clark doesn't fit in anyone's box. What started as subtle jabs soon turned into a full-blown attack. In June 2024, on The Dan Patrick Show, Geno went too far. He mocked Clark's fans, calling them delusional, ignorant, and so stupid that they were ruining women's basketball. His outrage? That people actually believed Clark could finish in the top 4 of the WNBA MVP race as a rookie. He dismissed it as nonsense. The fantasy of people who didn't understand the pro game. It was an unprecedented move. A legendary coach wasn't just criticizing a player, he was insulting the millions of new fans who were bringing money, attention, and energy into the sport. But here's where the revenge story took shape. Clark didn't fire back with words. She let her game speak. She won Rookie of the Year. She made first team All-WNBA. And when the MVP votes came in, she finished 4th, exactly where her so-called delusional fans had predicted. With every accomplishment, Clark destroyed his credibility. His attack on her supporters now looks like one of the most embarrassing takes in sports history. Geno tried to play the role of wise gatekeeper, but instead exposed himself as bitter and out of touch, clinging to a fading past. Clark's rise wasn't just her victory, it was vindication for every fan he insulted. He had drawn a line in the sand, and she erased it completely. As her star rose higher, Geno couldn't stop talking about her. She lived rent-free in his head, and his desperation grew. At one point, he even tried to take credit for the very movement he once dismissed. It wasn't enough for him to comment, he wanted to control the narrative, even own it.
Beginning of the conversation.
The women's game. So I think sometimes people get confused over the last 18 months, maybe over the 2 years, that they think it was a rocket, that you all jumped on Caitlin Clark's back and went straight up. But you've been there at the beginning.
And then they have something good to work with, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So it still comes back to those of us that are in charge of the game. Are we?
Geno Auriemma once accused everyone, fans, media, the whole world, of simply riding Caitlin Clark's coattails. He painted her success as something created by people like him, the so-called gatekeepers of the game. But that view exposed the truth. He never saw Clark for what she was, a rocket, a force of nature who reshaped women's basketball on her own. His comments weren't just about basketball, they were about power. To him, Clark's rise threatened the authority he'd held for decades. That's the backdrop for the final act. Geno tied his name to a new business venture, the unrivaled 3-on-3 league, pitched as the future of women's basketball. It had star players, money, and big promises. But it lacked one thing, a face. Without Clark, it had no magnet to pull in the millions of new fans she brought to the sport, so they came to her. Reports confirmed that the league, co-founded by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, offered Caitlin Clark over $1 million for just an 8-week season. This was Geno's desperate checkmate. After years of dismissing her, he was now holding out a lifeline, asking her to be the centerpiece that would save his project and make him millions. The same man who once couldn't bother to call her in high school was now writing $1 million check, and then came the perfect twist. Clark didn't yell, argue, or gloat. She simply said no. The rejection was louder than any speech. It was the ultimate payback.
Auriemma could be the reason why Caitlin Clark is definitely not joining the unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league. We finna unpack it.
It was the moment of confirmation. Caitlin Clark flat out rejected him. She turned down $1 million offer, and in doing so, she didn't just make a business choice, she made a statement. The message was crystal clear. She doesn't need his league, his approval, or to rescue the reputation of a man who spent years trying to downplay her greatness. That one simple word, no, was the perfect revenge. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was quiet, powerful, and final. And it left his project lifeless. Without Clark, there was no star, no excitement, no future. Fans saw it instantly for what it was, the ultimate humiliation. Social media lit up, mocking Geno for ever thinking Clark would save him after he had dismissed her so many times. But this wasn't about money. It was about principle. This was the final move in a game he didn't even realize he was losing. He thought he controlled the narrative, that his words carried more weight than her performance. But he was wrong. Caitlin Clark's revenge wasn't shouting back. It was winning, breaking records, and proving she was bigger than the criticism. And when desperation finally drove him to her door, all she had to do was walk away. His insults cost him millions. His arrogance cost him credibility. And his blind spot for her talent may have cost him his future. Geno's era is fading. Caitlin's is only beginning. The question now isn't whether he regrets his mistake, we know he does. The real question is, who else in the old guard will be next to learn that the game now belongs to a new generation?